First thought I had with Connect, I always think about Legos.
It's going to sound pretty cliche, but I think hand to hand.
That was my favorite thing as a kid.
Someone taking an interest in me.
But, because that was the thing, that you could connect them and they would stay stuck together until you took them apart.
Whenever I meet somebody new, it's a handshake. That's me connecting, and when I become friends with somebody, I hug them when I see them.
Giving a hug, and not, I don't think a handshake counts.
Right. And you couldn't build a house unless you connected all of the pieces together.
It's about building relationships.
And they all had to connect, they all had to fit, they all had to work together, and everyone was unique.
But if they can see that we still work together, we still work smoothly, and we still have ultimately that common goal.
Get different colors, so your house came up 15 different colors because it's all the pieces you had. But every piece came together, everything connected in one, and voila, it's a house.
You've got to build relationships with other teachers, whether you're sharing resources, whether you're sharing ideas. You've got to build relationships with your counselor. I know I go into our counselor's office all the time, maybe just to talk and sometimes to cry, because we're like a family.
One thing about Liberty is it's like a family.
No family is perfect. No family is perfect, so I want to make sure that everyone understands that no family is perfect, but there's some kind of magic in the air at that school where people genuinely care.
And the kids are so used to it. They'll see us and, they'll speak, but they'll just keep doing what they're doing because they know that, if you're at home, your older sister or your younger sibling's going to just walk into your room and it's okay. You acknowledge them, but you keep doing what you're doing.
Now kids feel like, oh, it's almost like he's my teacher too.
Coming from Spanish where no one in the building taught the same thing, and now having 3 or 4 other people, I really see that. I don't have to do everything on my own anymore, and I can constantly throw ideas off of someone. So I think just for my individual growth, it helps you to learn from someone else. I always want to learn and reflect on my teaching practices, and I think the best way I've done that is when I'll go in another teacher's classroom and I'll say, wow, I really like the way she's doing that, or I like the way she explained that, and then they do the same thing I do. So it's kind of an open door policy.
What memories do we all share? Right. What routines, what rituals, what traditions do we all share that unites us? Families do.
With the teachers being so close, it kind of just, the kids are almost like, okay, well, if the teachers are so close, then we need to be close too.
If we're expecting them to work in groups and as a team, then shouldn't they see that with their teachers as well?
Perhaps maybe if we were connecting a little bit better, then there might be a level of trust.
If they don't see that modeled, then how can we teach that to them?
Families remember that trip they went on. Families have that time that so-and-so did this, and you remember it and you hold on to it.
Connecting with their students, connecting with their colleagues, connecting with their principals. And I think that's important. You've got to feel comfortable going into your principal's office or your IP's office. You shouldn't be intimidated by them.
So I think it's really important that we work to build those individual relationships so that we don't turn into islands.
We connect around our content a lot, but we just all have the same vision and goal and passion for our kids and where we want our kids to be at the end of the program. We all went to AP training together. We're not all AP teachers, but we all went to the AP training so that we could figure out how we could start that and brainstorm together how we could start that in level 1 and build it all the way up so that those kids were ready. So I think that that's been a really good way to connect. I think that on a professional level, just having those goals for the kids where we want to get them and working together to get them there.
And the truth is, we may not all get along. Right? Just like they don't get along with all of their classmates.
But we try, and I think that's important. We talked about the effort earlier, so I think that's important.
It may not go anywhere, but even that in itself is connecting. It may not turn into a partnership, but
the effort is
the effort is the connection.
When it comes to trying to find the time to connect with all of your kids, and it's a seemingly insurmountable task in the beginning. I think it comes down to making the time, because teachers, we don't have time. Let's just make that clear. We don't have the time.
And what you do for every kid's not going to be the same. You're going to have to figure out who your kids are first. And so very early in the year, you got to figure out who they are.
But if I know that one of my kids that I'm struggling to connect with plays a sport,
Establishing a culture in athletics, and we figured the best way to establish a culture there was to be successful. We would like to have that culture.
you know, I'm going to make the time to show up to at least one of their games and then make sure I stay until the whole game is over to say, hey, good game. Glad I got a chance to watch you. That way they see me trying to connect.
One of the things I've learned over the last few years is if you can ask 100 teachers what they do to connect with kids. I don't think there's a right way. I think you got to find your way.
Some people can confuse that for, oh, I've got to be their best friend and know, all of their drama and this and that. And I don't think that that's what connecting with our students means necessarily.
Well, one thing that I've had to do a lot lately, I'm getting old, I believe, and I have to do a lot of research on what the kids are into now.
I try to connect them to me. So, okay, I'm just a little bit on the silly side, a little bit on the goofy side, and I don't tend to really care a whole bunch if I look or act kind of silly. And most people are like, huh, that's interesting. He's just kind of a likable guy. Let's just see what happens next. Right.
You have to be real with your kids. You can't put up a facade. You have to let your students know who you are. And if you make a mistake, I laugh at myself.
It's not really a secret, but students know if you don't know their name.
My classroom management totally changed when I started deciding that I was going to spend, like, whoever was the biggest thorn in my side in that class, you're my new best friend. And we're going to hang, and I'm going to hear about your weekend every Monday, and I'll be waiting for you, and we are buddies now.
Because the challenging kids, when a teacher talks to them, they're used to a teacher talking to them because they are in trouble. So the challenging kids, just having the same type of conversation with them that I would have with any other child. And at first it is hard for them because they may not be used to it, but just being genuine and then consistent.
Teachers, we put so much pressure on ourselves to accomplish so much. I think sometimes it's important for us to simply unlock the door and allow the student to do the rest of the work. So that way, I go to that student's game and I say, hey, good job, really enjoyed it. That could be me unlocking the door. So now they see, okay, my teacher took time out to come and watch me and try to connect with me on this level. I guess I'll open the door.
Those are the ones that I have to talk to the most, and that is fine. They're the hardest to talk to at first, but when you break down that wall, it becomes easier, and they're not as challenging anymore. And the child that acts out is the one that needs the relationship the most. So you just have to, it's hard, but you just have to be there for that child. You have to be that child's cheerleader. I mean, they may need a whole cheerleading squad.
I think sitting across from someone and getting them to make eye contact for some students can be as close of a connection for others as like a big hug, pick you up off the ground could be for some.
And then you can't give up on them. Sometimes the kid, you want to give up, but you can't because the teacher before them may have given up on them.
Students are never going to be truly engaged if the teacher is not bubbling over with passion for what they're sharing with the students. And sometimes it's fake it till you make it. Sometimes you have to convince yourself as a teacher why your content is important. The students will never connect to it if you don't.
I've had kids say, I met my best friend in your class. They didn't become best friends over literature or grammar. If they did, cool. But but they tell me it's because of the atmosphere.
I've never sat down with a math student and been like, let's factor this, and then we just, our hearts met in the middle,
Right.
I can tell you exactly what I learned in English because my teacher didn't make it. It wasn't about the book learning. It was about the life learning and taking what's in the book and applying it to life and discussing and having conversations and hearing different perspectives.
But I've never walked out of the school building at the end of a long day and been nailed that PowerPoint delivery, killed it, and that's what made my heart sing and my heart beat a little faster and like brought a smile to my face is, man, I killed that lecture today. Like, but what will make me like tear up or smile at the end of a really long day when I'm super tired is I know a little more about a guy named Elvis and about his background story and about where he wants to go in life, and he is my new reason for waking up in the morning. And and I didn't get there just by being like, what'd you get for number 6? Go check the answer key. But by just kind of, taking the time to ask him about his life.
Something as simple as like a Socratic seminar. When you were talking about those issues that you can pull out of a novel or a piece of text, but giving the students their voice about it and letting them run with it, I found that to be so powerful. It doesn't have to just be me standing in front of the classroom all the time. Like, let them lead and see where it takes them, because it's pretty amazing where they go with it when they know it's okay and they're given that opportunity, which I don't think we give them that opportunity enough.
Content and standards, that's important. But when our kids leave us, they're human beings. They aren't words on a piece of paper. They're not mandates handed down to us. They're flesh and blood.
And they love it. Like, they want more of it. Like, they will beg. When you introduce that to them the first time, they want to come back. When can we do that again? When can we, we can't do it every day, obviously.
Sometimes stepping out of my comfort zone and looking at, okay, well, this Pokemon Go thing, the craze now. Well, how can I connect that to science next year? How can I, if I know that all of my kids or the majority of my kids love this, how can I connect that to my content?
And they are so observant. If you go in and you kind of are like, okay, guys, today we're going to do something. It's not the best thing we're ever going to do. They're not going to get excited about it. You have to go in excited about everything that you do. And I think that that's why a lot of people, I don't know, maybe shy away from teaching or whatever it is, because it's draining.
If you're going to come to class, you ought to engage. You're stuck here anyway. Let's go do something.
You've got to go in there and give the performance of a lifetime, whether you're totally feeling it or not. It just has to be done. I feel it is so important to share that spark with the kids. I mean, to go in there when they see that you love what you're talking about, they latch on to it, whether it's something they would have latched on to before or not. When you walk in, I mean, I'm the biggest grammar nerd in the world, and when I walk in and I start talking about, today we're going to conjugate verbs and we're going to diagram sentences, and I get so excited. I'm drawing circles and we're drawing arrows.
So I do try to have a sense of humor in the classroom, being able to laugh at myself, because I make a lot of mistakes.
I probably use humor more than anything else. I think I like to use humor a lot in class, and I also keep students on their toes. We have peaks and valleys of intensity, intense moments in class.
And just have fun and laugh and enjoy what you're doing.
Even just, 1 year, you get these kids that are so different, so you have to change this.
I feel like I've done it the right way and I've done it the wrong way since I've been teaching. Hopefully I've been doing it the right way as of late, just from growing.
You kind of get stuck. Is that, well, this is how I was taught, and this is how my parents were taught, and this is how they were taught, so I have to teach it that way. So here's this. No, it's not exciting, but this is how we have to do it. And I think there might be a level of fear that, well, if I tried something new, if I tried something different, well, it might not work.
Is there any way I can actually really use this? And I think if you really look at it, I know in my content it's pretty easy, but the answer is yes, most of the time. And trying to find ways in class to get students to use the content realistically and create an actual artifact or something that they can take with them that makes the learning meaningful.
If I can make them see that this really does apply to real life, math does, science does, engineering, some does in some way, so real life or a career path. I know in engineering, some of the job skills that we teach them, they're like, why are we learning how to do this thing? So, well, why am I learning how to do CAD or something like that? Like, well, this is a job. Like, what do you mean? So, well, you can have that. People will pay you money to go make stuff on a computer like this. Like, really?
Continuously giving students the idea that it's so important to be in this class, and it's so important to be passionate about this, because at the end of the day, when you sift away the math and the science and the statistics and all the stuff that we're working on, we're making the world a better place, and anyone can get behind that. So I can sneak math and science in to anyone that can like buy that from me. I could get them to like math and science.
I think doing the claim data commentary approach last year, I really saw the value in that, because I think the kids could really see the connection between their writing and how that could connect to so many aspects in the real world. Any job that they were going to do, any argument that they were going to have, and how they could have that evidence to support that argument.
The notes from Coach Ring's talking forever, and then take a quiz on it. Well, yeah, that's part of it. That can be part of it, but if you're not using that information and all that content and all that knowledge and all that creative thinking to make something tangible and important, what are you doing?
Something crazy cool.
Breaks the mold.
Just to break the mold, yes.
At the end of the day, I want to send a whole student out into the world. And if they hung out in my classroom all day, they're not going to be a whole student. They need to go see the people who are the best of the best in all these different content areas, so that they are, so they're ready for what's coming.
In the classroom, establishing a culture of, we want our students to be as creative as possible and to be as curious as possible.
They need art, and they desperately need drama, and they desperately need athletics, and a lot of the things that they're going to pull, they really need history classes.
Just because you're in this room and we might be talking about math or economics doesn't mean all the answers are in this room. And what we're going to do in here is not just going to learn about what these things say in the book, but we're going to learn about what are the bigger pictures. What are the big questions when it comes to this topic and this subject? And we're not going to be able to find those answers right here in a textbook. We're going to have to reach out.
Just kind of humbling yourself and saying, like, I'm not the be-all, end-all.
We are lucky that we're in a community of people who I think would really want to help us and be a part of what we're doing, but we don't always let them. We don't always invite them. We don't always let them know what we're doing.
But I've genuinely always felt that way about Madison City, that I'm surrounded by total brilliance, and I really, and I want to tap into that.
The easiest thing is just bringing people in. I know with the engineering, we'll bring in guest speakers. So when we're talking about civil engineering, let's bring in a civil engineer and tell us what it's like to be a civil engineer. You remember him? But he does, and he said one thing that he connected with.
The parents themselves can be good resources for us, and because they may be able to come in and help us with something, or they may know somebody else who can. And sometimes it's just having a conversation, just saying, I've kind of got this idea and I don't know how. Instead of, here's my proposal. I think we can do this, this, and this, and this, and this. Can you help? Instead, it's, I've got an idea.
Because as teachers, we typically, the only time we call home is when things aren't good. And I really want to be that teacher, because I've known others that they call home when things are good.
A lot of parents want to say, well, they're growing up and we want to kind of be hands off with them. But you still, exactly, you still have to keep the parents totally involved in it. Just like we said before with the students and having to be authentic and real with them, you've got to be authentic and real with the parents too.
Yes.
They've got to know exactly who you are.
And I think we have to step away sometimes from the hustle and bustle of education and just sit down and get to know each other.
That you do need to look at it on a more human, basic level, because it doesn't need to have this educational jargon and terminology going along with it.
I think just like being in tune with students,
showing that vulnerability, and it goes a long ways.
They're now connecting with someone or something that makes them get out of bed. If there was never a connection, they might not ever get out of bed.
Creating the environment where kids feel safe enough to create a family to bond, and so that way what they're learning sticks.
Our kids need us. They need us to be kind of a little web underneath them.
I'm here to create a better world, and I can't do that without learning about knowing people and trusting people and being safe around people and connecting.
A lot of us think, oh, I connect. What's wrong with my connections? I connect just fine. I'm a good connector, you know? But I do connect really well with X number of people, but what if